Hello, how is everybody? It's good to see you all again. Couple of announcements. I know that some of you were sort of in a panic about submitting the essay, so let me just make some comments about that and then we'll get started. I've been told that Mozilla Firefox is the best browser to use for submitting that stuff, and I had at least one student that I know of who tried to submit, could not, and then downloaded Mozilla Firefox and then tried from there and was able to do it. You also need to make sure that your essay is saved as a Word file, and you need to make sure that you are using a appropriate electronic device. Sometimes there are problems with like Chromebooks and stuff, so if it doesn't work, try a different device, try Mozilla Firefox, make sure it's Microsoft Word. If we're still having problems, that's something that IT is going to have to handle, and you can submit a help desk ticket. But hopefully that will take care of it, and most of the essays are in. So I'm sorry, guys, I have no idea what causes these problems. So we just got done with Essay 1, and now it's time to talk about Essay 2, because that's the pacing of summer. So the Essay 2, we're moving into what I call the argumentative unit, where I basically talk about what most college writing is about, and that's argumentation and persuasion. And we sprinkle in a little bit of exemplification in there too, which is another strategy, and we'll talk about that. But so what is argument? When I say the word argument, I feel like what comes to most people's minds is like, oh yeah, well that's when, you know, my sister and I fight over the last Little Debbie cake or something like that. That's not really an argument, right? Maybe you're having an argument, but when we're using that in the formal sense, that word argument, we're not talking about like a banter or like a heated exchange. We're talking about convincing someone of your position as being true, and winning people over, right? So argumentation and persuasion are kind of the same. There's a little bit of distinction. There are chapters about each in your book, and you're going to have to go over those because of the stuff that's due this coming weekend. But I have my own way of doing this stuff too, so there is no wrong answer for all of this. But my method I like for myself. I think you will like it too, because it helps you visualize the process of making an argumentative essay. So arguments are positions that require proof, right? And the way that we think about argumentation is we think about it as a claim, an argumentative claim. What is an argumentative claim? Well, if I were to say, this can has red writing, that's not really an argumentative claim, because everyone can see that. Everyone can see the writing on the can. They can see that it's red. So that would not qualify as an argumentative claim, because what's there to argue? But if I were to say, the writing on the can is red because market research shows that red gets people's attention better and thus sells more soda, well, now we have a claim, because then I have to prove several things. I have to prove, one, that the writing is red because of the marketing intention. Two, that red actually sells more, right? So that is the burden of proof. That it requires me to then like piece together a case for why this is true, right? So that's how you should think about it. When you do an argumentative essay, you're trying to put forth a claim that you're going to reinforce with evidence, and then you're going to analyze the evidence in your own words, okay? It's a lot, I realize. So some of the basic stuff about argument. Let me go ahead and show you this whiteboard here. All right. So the main things that we need to know about argument. The first one is the persuasive triangle. Sometimes it's called the persuasive triangle. And you've probably heard of these. These are three little Greek words. Ethos, pathos, logos. All right, and we got to talk about these to really get into the discussion of persuasion and argumentation. So number one, what is ethos? If I say, give me an argument based in ethos. Well, ethos is appeal to authority or to credibility. Sorry, not type. So whose authority? Well, In this case, I'm sorry, that's a mess. In this case, when we are trying to make an argument based on an appeal to someone's authority, that person's authority needs to match the area of expertise that we are writing about. So, for example, if I were going to make an argument about nutrition, for instance, and I was going to quote somebody, if the person I'm quoting is just some random guy who's trying to sell dietary supplements, then his credibility doesn't really matter because he doesn't have any expertise. But if I cite a nutritionist who went to school for nutrition science and who has the necessary degrees to speak with qualification in that area, that appeal to authority makes my case a lot stronger because I say, well, see, look at all these studies done by this nutritionist and see, clearly I'm correct about my position. So you can appeal to people's authority. The dangers of appealing to authority is you can appeal to authority that doesn't match up to the area of expertise. So if the governor came into the building and I said, well, the governor says that cigarette smoke is okay for you. Even though he is the governor, and that comes with a certain implication of credibility or status, I can't really cite the governor in an argument about tobacco because the governor is not, to my knowledge, a health expert. So even though he has a position of prestige, that position of prestige does not match up to the field of health-related issues, and so quoting him in such matters would be incorrect. Next comes pathos. Now, pathos is the appeal to emotion. The example I always use is you watch those commercials where they're trying to get you to donate. And they have the little sad dogs, the sad puppies, and the sad puppy's in the cage, and he's crying, and you just feel compelled to rip out your wallet and give them as much money as possible. And why is that? Well, because the appeal to the emotion of the little suffering dog has pulled on your heartstrings and made you compelled to act, right? So they have used that emotional appeal to get you to do what they wanted you to do. Now, I'm not saying that those charities are sinister or anything like that, but there definitely is a conscious effort to use emotion to appeal to you. Now, emotion can go too far. It is possible for you to think too much with emotion and for it to cloud your reason. An example I give is imagine that the class, I don't know how many are in this class, but let's say there's 12 of you. And I think there's a little more in the online class and the hybrid class. That's about right. So let's say 3 of you take. 12 of us are on a yacht, and there's a little skiff that's attached to the yacht. And we get out in the middle of the ocean, and 3 of you decide to go and tour this crazy island by yourself. And so you take the skiff and you go off. Now, when you get to the island, all of a sudden you find that the island is surrounded by sharks, and you get shipwrecked, and there's a tornado blowing in. So you're on Tornado Shipwreck Island. Now, I'm the captain of the yacht, and there are 7 people on the yacht, and there are 3 people on the island. I now have the choice, do I save you or not? Because if I try to save you, there's a very good chance that everyone will die. That's the 7 people on the yacht and the 3 people on the island. If I don't save you, then there is the emotional issue of us abandoning our compatriots to die. But in that case, it makes more sense to save 7 people than 3. I know that's a complicated ethical situation, and I don't want everybody to freak out, but it does make more sense. If you know that the chances are very high of everyone dying, then the best course of action is to just say, well, that's really sad. I'm sorry to hear that happened. And that would be an example where emotion, if you were compelled to go and save them and then you got everyone killed, emotion would be limited in its ability to help you. The next one is logos, and that is appeal to logic. And this is basically evidence and reason, right? Well, because of this, we should do this, and here's why, right? You give a very clear, logically articulated point. And logos is really the safest of these 3. But there are problems with logic, too. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Watchmen. It's a movie about comic book characters, and there's a character in it called Dr. Manhattan. And Dr. Manhattan undergoes a mutation that makes him super smart and super powerful, and he gets so smart that he actually gets really out of touch, and he begins to see everything as a chemical reaction. He looks at human beings, and he says, oh, well, that's just a bag of chemicals misfiring. And there is a sense to where he's correct, but at the same time, you can see that his logical, his overinvestment in the logical dimension has robbed him of his ethical capacity, because he no longer sees human beings as human beings. He sees them as chemical reactions. So it's possible for you to go too far with logic as well. But when you have the three of these at your disposal, these are basically the three basic tools that you have, basically the basic tools that you have for putting forth an argument and for convincing someone of your position. So please remember these. They're very important. The next thing I want to talk about is logical fallacies. All right, logical fallacies. So a fallacy is a incorrect assumption. And a logical fallacy would be basically errors in logic, okay, mistakes in logic. So what are some of the big logical fallacies? Well, some of them are actually here. You can have an appeal to authority that doesn't match the area of expertise. You can have an appeal to emotion in a negative way. But there are others too that you need to know. The first one I want to talk about is the slippery slope fallacy, because I think this one is one that comes up a lot. What is the slippery slope fallacy? Whenever you're arguing with someone, and hopefully you don't spend a whole lot of time arguing with people. I really hope that's true. But those of you who might, people will say, well, if we do that, if we legalize marijuana, the next thing you know, you'll be able to buy heroin out of vending machines. And that's what's called the slippery slope fallacy. It implies that whatever the issue at hand is, it is a slippery slope to things that are worse. And while the issue at hand might not seem that bad, the issues that are to come as a result of this issue are far worse. And the reason that it's a fallacy is because there's no guarantee that one thing will lead to another in that way. It is quite possible that we could, decrease the marijuana laws and not have heroin in vending machines, right? Because I think that's a bit of a leap. That's kind of crazy. I've seen everything in my short time, so I wouldn't be surprised. So slippery slope, sometimes it looks like it makes sense, because there are, you can make arguments like, well, if we give every kid a cell phone, the next thing you know, they'll all be completely introverted and into the internet. And there's some truth to that, right? There is some truth in implying causality, but you can't say for certain that one action will inevitably lead to another, or that it's like a domino effect, right? Because that's really a fallacy if you think about it. So that's one of them. The next logical fallacy I want to talk about is called ad hominem. The ad hominem fallacy. Got lots of Latin and Greek and all this stuff. Ad hominem means attacking the person. So if I put forth a very well articulated point, and you come by and say, well, you're just a stinker, and so your opinion doesn't matter. You have attacked my personhood so that you could avoid addressing the issue that I brought up. And this is a fallacy. It's called ad hominem. It means attack the person. Sorry, gonna have me some soda here. So you got to watch out for ad hominem. Don't call names. If you call people names, you're technically breaking the rules. And a lot of people who use these fallacies, they don't even realize it. They use fallacies without realizing that they're even not using logic correctly. It's like they think they're doing it right, but actually they're not. Okay, so the next one is the either-or fallacy. Either-or fallacy. So the either-or is basically where you talk to somebody and they say, well, you've got two choices. You're either this or you're that, right? So I'll give you an example. Well, you're either for the Iraq war or you hate the troops. There's no in-between. Now, the problem with that is, of course, there is an in-between. You can be against the Iraq war and pro the troops. In fact, being against the Iraq war might actually make you pro-troop in essence, right? Because you don't want to send them into harm's way. So the either-or fallacy is designed to trap you into a dichotomy where it looks like you only have two choices, and only one of those choices is usually optional, is usually an option. The other one is just so absurd. Like either you support the Iraq war, it's like, okay, that's not terribly absurd, or you hate the troops. It's like that. Well, I'm not going to hate the troops, right? So it's designed to make you It's designed to demonize you. It's designed to trap you into a false dichotomy, and it's a fallacy. If anyone ever tries to do that to you, tell them, hey, man, learn the rules. Okay, the next one. The straw man. The straw man. What is a straw man? Well, the straw man is where, let's say I get up and I make a very articulate point. I have a very excellent argument. I lay it out for you very clearly. And you look at me and you go, wow, that's an excellent argument. And you're trying to find ways to poke holes in the argument, and you can't. And so you decide that what you'll do is you'll phrase the argument in another way so that you can attack it more easily. So you'll say, what you're saying is, and then you'll say something that isn't what I said, or that it's close, but it has certain modifications which complicate it. That is the straw man, because what you're doing is you're setting up a straw man and you're attacking the straw man. You're not attacking my position. You've left my position alone. You have made a straw man in the image of my position, and now you are attacking that. So make sure you attack specifically what your opponents say, what the people put forth. Okay, straw man. Don't do it. It's a bad idea. Let's see, what else? We got the red herring. The red herring. What is a red herring? Well, a herring is like a fish, and I'm pretty sure that this comes from like training bloodhounds and stuff. They used to hide fish to try to distract the dogs, and they would train the dog to ignore the fish and to go after what it was they were finding. But the fish is really stinky, so it would be hard for the dog to like ignore it unless it was well trained. So a red herring is like a distraction that someone puts into the argument to get you away from the original point. So if I were making a case like, well, you know, the tobacco industry is really deadly and it's killing all these people and we should probably regulate it to the point where they can't even sell anything, you would say, well, what about the jobs? What about the jobs? Right? That's going to put a bunch of people out of work. And it's like, yeah, it might, but that's a different discussion, right? It may be a good reason not to do it in some sense, but really what you're doing is you're not focusing on the claim, which is tobacco is deadly and you're selling death and that's bad. You've now used a red herring to sort of make it about the people and their jobs, and how could you be against jobs, right? So it's a trick. It's a trick, and you want to try to avoid it. Red herrings. Let's see, what else do we got? Oh, a loaded question. That's where the question that is asked is designed in a way that's going to make you look bad. You know, let's say that you are reviewing a case of self-defense that happened, and there's a YouTube video, and you're not sure whether or not it's self-defense or not. You have this guy, and he does this violent thing, and you're trying to figure out whether or not it's self-defense. If you're arguing with someone that says it isn't self-defense, they might give you a loaded question like, well, how long have you supported murder, right? Of course, the implication there is that you support murder and that you're awful for even thinking that this would be a case of self-defense, right? So the loaded question is designed to defame your character and to undermine what you're doing. Another one you need to know, and this one is very common, this one is called gaslighting. And this is where you basically try to convince your opponent that their position is crazy, even if it isn't. So you'll say something fairly rational, and your opponent goes, really? Huh, you serious? You can't possibly think that. Right? And what they're doing is they're trying to get you to question yourself, like, well, maybe I shouldn't think that. Is this really that absurd? Wow, I don't know. So that's another one that you want to watch out for. Let me see. Think of some more. Just want to make sure we touch base on these, because the number one way to arguing appropriately is learning the fallacy so that you don't fall victim to them. It's very, very easy to fall victim to fallacies. Let's see, burden of proof. Okay, so the burden of proof is basically that if you make an extraordinary claim, the fact that I can't disprove it doesn't make it true. All right, so if I say there is a teapot in orbit around the sun, all right, well, you can't prove that there's not a teapot, so that means that I'm right. But see, I'm the one that's made the extraordinary claim. So that means that the burden of proof, meaning the job to prove it is on me. I have to prove that there's a teapot. Otherwise, it's irrelevant because you can't disprove the teapot. Neither of us can. It's too far away. So burden of proof. If you make a claim, it is your job to prove the claim, not the opponent's. All right? And that's a common one. People say, well, you can't disprove this. Well, no, but I don't have to. Okay. What else do we got? Let me see. There's one or two more that I'm missing. I'm trying to figure it out. Let's see. Oh, circular logic. And we'll end on this one. Circular, for fallacies anyway. Circular logic is basically using the thing as proof for itself. So here's the example. The Bible says that the words in the Bible are true, and therefore the Bible is true because the Bible says it's true, right? It's circular because you're assuming that the Bible is true, and you're assuming so because it says that it's true, so it implies that it would be true anyway. Anyway, you get it. You see how you can go crazy with that kind of stuff. So make sure that you aren't using the premise to prove the premise. That's what circular logic is. Okay, so these are fallacies. So now you're looking on the screen right now. You've got persuasive triangle, which is your basic toolbox for how to approach persuasion. Then you've got a list of logical fallacies, which are ways that you can screw up the logical process and that you should probably avoid. So now with that, I'm going to just go up here and, well, how do I do this? Well, I'll just keep using. All right, well, I got a little more room over here. Claim versus observation. Now, we talked about this some. So when you're making an argument, it's your job to put forth a claim, okay? So how do you put forth claims? There are lots of ways to do it. I have a formula that I like to give students for the second essay, and it's called problem, solution, so what? This is my formula, okay? I'm a big formula guy. You may have noticed this if you remember hook, line, and sinker. So this is for thesis and topics and its claims. All right. So for your second essay, I'll just go ahead and tell you, we'll look at the prompt in a minute, but for the second essay, you're going to pick a topic, okay? An argumentative topic that you're then going to propose a solution to. So what you should do is you should look for a problem in the society that relates to you or that you have interest in, and you should propose a solution to said problem within the essay. So when you're making your claim, your thesis claim, let's say that, I'll use this example. I think I've mentioned this example a lot, but I'll mention it again. I had a student who worked in the healthcare field, and she was having a hard time picking a topic for the second essay. So she decided that she was going to look at the healthcare field for problems. And one of the problems that she found was that there was a blood shortage. Okay? A blood shortage. So that's the problem, right? The problem is there's not enough blood. So what is the solution to the blood shortage? Well, she came up with several ways. Basically, her main way was organize an information campaign to increase awareness of, of blood issues. Because what we found was that a lot of people didn't realize how difficult it was to give blood and how little blood there was and what a blood problem there was. And most people actually, as I found out from reading this essay, are ineligible to give blood, which means that those who are eligible, it is that much more important for you to give it. So the so what then? What is the so what? Well, the so what is why this matters, all right? And why does it matter? Well, everyone's going to need blood in their life, right? So we increase the general health and wellness of the population. So a thesis statement here might be something like, due to the increasing blood shortage, we should organize an information campaign to increase awareness of blood donation issues, thereby increasing the general health and wellness of the population. That would be a thesis statement for an essay that followed this formula: problem, solution, so what? And you can do this formula for the thesis and the topic sentence claims. You just remember that the topic sentences are a little bit more focused than the thesis statement. So when you're thinking about essay 2, remember, problem, solution, so what? What problem are you going to solve? What's your solution to the problem? So with that, I know that we're kind of going through a lot really quick. You can watch this video over, or you can email me if you have any questions. I want to look at essay 2 real quick so you guys know what's up. It's like, well, we just finished essay 1. Yeah, welcome to summer. Okay. All right, here is the prompt for essay 2. It is the SLO assignment. That's not very important for you. In this assignment, students will demonstrate the ability to compose a well-organized and effectively developed essay in MLA format using a combination of 3 different rhetorical strategies: argumentation, persuasion, and exemplification. You will use argumentation by putting forth strong argumentative claims, that's the problem, solution, so what, for the thesis and topic sentences. You will use exemplification. Remember, exemplification is the use of examples to prove a point, by providing evidence in the forms of quotes from scholarly and credible sources. And you will use persuasion by convincing your reader that the evidence you have provided proves the thesis and topic sentence claims. So you're going to explain how this evidence proves the claim. While this combination of strategies represents somewhat of a deviation from the textbook, a sample essay will be provided in the writing assignments folder to demonstrate the proper form. Your essay should include a clear thesis statement, topic sentences to support the thesis statement, major details to expand on the topic sentences, and additional evidence to reinforce the major details. Okay. What are your topics that you can choose? Right now, the topics are open, but I have a stipulation for that. I get tired of reading the same essays over and over again. Okay, everybody has that same knee-jerk argument that they carry out around the table every Thanksgiving with their weird uncle, right? You know, guns. Should there be guns? Should marijuana be legal in every street corner? Should we allow for young people to drink at an earlier age, or something like that? All of these are topics that are so basic that if I don't make a claim as to, like, a statement as to why you should avoid them, every essay that I'm going to read is going to fall within one of these handful of topics. And they all these essays, it's amazing how similar they are. So what I want you to do is put yourself outside of your comfort zone when you are picking a topic. Remember the woman with the blood crisis. She had no idea what to write. No idea. She came into my class, my office. She was nervous. She didn't know what was going on. We started having a conversation. We figured out, hey, you know something about this healthcare stuff that nobody else knows because you have an insight into that. Why don't you take this in this direction? Then she went, she did some research. She found a lot of information about blood and blood donations. Boom, the essay was off. She did a good job, right? So I want you to pick your own topic. I want you to pick a topic that is outside of your comfort zone and which isn't what I would call low-hanging fruit, right? So that's the easy topic, the easy thing that you're going to write about that you've written about 1,000 times. Other than that, I'm not going to give many stipulations about it. If you're unsure as to whether or not a topic could be approved, you can email me and say, hey, can I write about this? Most of the time, my answer is going to be, well, what research can you find? What evidence can you find to prove, to make this argument, right? But other than that, I like to leave it open. I like to give you freedom. And some people don't know what to do with the freedom. They're just like, oh my God, tell me what to write. And if you need topics, I do have a list of sample topics that's available. But I would like to withhold giving those out to give you the opportunity to come up with one on your own. So this essay is also 5 well-developed paragraphs. It's also 1,000 words. All this stuff from the last one, you're just doing it again, basically MLA format, all that fun stuff. You got to have direct quotes from scholarly sources. That's the difference, which means you're going to be required to quote and cite things. And those things have to be credible. They have to be cited correctly. Remember the danger of not citing correctly. you run the risk of plagiarism, which is a big problem. Okay, so if you want to find this, this is in the writing assignments folder, the second folder, and it has it's basically very cut and dry. Pick a topic, argue about it. Problem, solution, so what? That's how you make your claims. Okay, so that's pretty basic. Now let's take a look at. I have an example essay that I want to show you. All right. This is one that now one thing I want to say about this essay before we get started is that this is a satire written by myself. So what is a satire? For those of you who don't know, it's something that uses humor, irony, and ridicule to prove a point, usually a political one. So you will not be writing a satire for your second essay, okay? This was a creative liberty taken by me because I thought it was funny and it was entertaining to me, and it's probably entertaining to you as well. So I don't want you to write a satire, but I do want you to structure an argument in a similar way to the way the one in this essay is structured, okay? So do pay attention to the structural aspects, but remember, it's not your job to make a joke, right? That's just for fun. Okay, so first of all, we know that the title is related to the hook. So the title is Poultry for POTUS, POTUS being President of the United States. And that's my title. And then my subtitle is Non-Human Persons in Political Office. And this title, Non-Human Persons, is used to refer to animals with a high intellect, like dolphins or dogs. Some places, like India, has a legal status for non-human persons, where like you can't kill them or anything. It's the same sort of punishment that it would be if you did that to a human being. So we'll start off with the hook. Here's the hook. Have you ever been so disgusted with a politician that you think to yourself, a beast could do a better job? Well, perhaps you're right. So this is a good hook because it's provocative. It's shocking. You're like, what? It's taboo to refer to human beings as beasts. But politicians, they're kind of fair game because they make our lives more difficult. So this is a good hook because it's provocative. It draws you in. You want to know more. So what comes next? The line section. We have to have context. We need to know all the context about what's going on. Since the country's founding, 100% of all political offices have been held by human beings, and the Enlightenment experiment started by our founders now lies in ruin. Tradition greatly influences political reality, but most scarcely consider the possibility of non-humans running for office. Moreover, many do not know that such a possibility has no legal sanction. In the presidential election of 2016, we're a little bit dated here. I wrote this a few years ago. A crested rooster named Oscar Goldman filed for ballot access in all 50 states. Despite glaring credentials as the most qualified presidential hopeful in the pool, Mr. Goldman was denied ballot access on the justification that he was not a human being and therefore, in accordance with U.S. law, ineligible to hold any office. How many sentient beings with a penchant for good governance will never exercise their talents due to this senseless prohibition? So you see here in the line section, I have set up all of the necessary context that you need to understand the situation. We know what the essay is about. We know what the problems are. We know who Mr. Goldman is, why his experience matters. So once we've just set up all of the contextual information in the line section, we then move on to the thesis statement. And if you'll recall, the formula that I gave you for the thesis statement is problem, solution, so what? So what's the problem? Given that human underperformance constitutes the source of American political failure. That's the problem. Humans underperform, the political system fails. So we've identified the problem. What's the solution? Laws concerning political eligibility, meaning the ability to run for office, should be amended to allow non-human persons to seek elected office. So the solution is letting the animals run for president, okay, or run for office. So what? The so what factor is tough because the so what factor is like, why does this matter? Why is this important? How is this going to make our lives better or different? So the so what here is thereby opening the field to more qualified representatives and rejuvenating American politics as a whole. Okay. So problem, solution, so what? We got a strong thesis statement. A little bit wordy, but could be worse. So moving right along. When we get to the topic sentence, remember, it follows the same formula. Problem, solution, so what? What's the problem? As human hegemony in elected positions falsely implies, Homo sapiens are the most intelligent beings on the planet. That is wordy as hell. But it does identify the problem. Humans dominate the political system, and so we think we're tough. We think we're really smart. But that's not necessarily true. It says that it falsely implies. So we think we're smart, but maybe things are smarter. Full political rights should be extended to a wide array of cognizant species, providing an influx of intelligence into public life. And there's the solution in the so what. So what do we do after we have the problem, solution, so what in the body paragraphs? Well, that's where the exemplification comes in, the use of examples from credible sources. You are going to have to look up examples from credible sources and look up credible scholarly articles for which you can quote, basically. Indeed, human hubris places us atop the hierarchy of animal intelligence. But in Maggie Coerth-Baker's article, quote, humans are dumb at figuring out how smart animals are, close quote, she implies that attempts to rank animal intelligence are innately misguided. Quote, this is the quote that I'm using from this article. Experts who study animal intelligence across species say we can't rank animals by their smarts. Scientists don't even try anymore, which means there's no objective way to determine which animals would deserve more human-like rights. Here, Coerth-Baker makes an extremely relevant point. Human beings who judge animals against a human standard invite fault into their assessment. Given the extreme differences between various organisms on Earth, it is fundamentally skewed to imply that human skill sets and gradients of intelligence are universal. We must consider the possibility that what we interpret in animals as lesser and primitive might simply be too alien for us to grasp. So here I have provided the claim, problem, solution, so what. I have evidenced the claim with the quote from Maggie Baker's article, and then I have explained how the quote proves the claim in my own words at the end there. That is the formula for your body paragraphs. And then you just lather, rinse, repeat. Do it over again. Here we go. Next topic sentence. Problem, solution, so what? Because human beings maintain brutal dominance hierarchies predicated on violence. Yes, they do. That is a problem. Extension of political power to less destructive creatures will ensure a more pleasant reality for all earthly inhabitants. Solution, so what? Now, evidence. In an article for The Guardian titled, Is This All Humans Are? Diminutive Monsters of Death and Destruction? Columnist George Monibot correctly notes that the very age in which we live is branded by our violent impression upon it, stating, by the way, this is what a block quote should look like. The Anthropocene, now a popular term among scientists, is the epoch in which we live, one dominated by human impacts on the living world. Most date it from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. But it may have begun much earlier, with a killing spree that commenced 2 million years ago. What rose onto its hind legs on the African savannas was, from the outset, death, the destroyer of worlds. While Monibot's statement seems hyperbolic, meaning an extreme exaggeration, it is nevertheless true. Throughout human history, human beings carried out numerous animal extinctions and left many irreversible imprints on the natural world, including global warming and invasive civilization. Should we really trust such a rapacious and imbalanced species with the task of governance? Okay, I have provided the evidence, I have analyzed the evidence, and I've provided a nice transition question to get us to the final body paragraph. Here we go, final topic sentence. Given humanity's failure to maintain sustainable balance within the biosphere. Now you notice that there are similarities between each of these claims, but they are a little specified, a little bit different. Allowing the election of organisms which do not habitually endanger the entire planet will promote ecological and governmental harmony, both at home and abroad. Okay, there's my claim. Problem, solution, so what? According to NASA, human beings have radically altered the Earth's climate, putting the entire biosphere at risk. Quote, the current warming trend is of particular significance because most of it is extremely likely, greater than 95% probability, to be the result of human activity since the mid-20th century, and proceeding at a rate that is unprecedented over decades to millennia. As NASA suggests, few species in history have had quite such a profound effect on planetary vitals in such a short period of time. Should we continue to entrust political authority to a species who cannot help but threaten the very planet upon which it lives? Expanding political rights to non-human persons may well be the decision that saves the planet from a mass extinction event. Okay, 3 body paragraphs. We did it. Now what's left to do? You want a conclusion that doesn't repeat yourself. Leaves the audience thinking. Let's see if we meet that specification. Oscar Goldman may have been denied ballot access in 2016, but that has not prevented him from working tirelessly towards a brighter future. If he succeeds in his mission to run as an independent candidate in 2020, we all stand to benefit, if not from his election, then certainly from his efforts as an activist. For millions of years, the world was under the care of animals alone, and it never before faced the kinds of problems humans have inflicted. If we all band together to extend political rights to non-human persons, our posterity will inherit a better world. Together, we can elect poultry for POTUS. Now, one thing I will say is that this works cited is supposed to be on its own page. I'm not sure how that happened. But here, I got to give you this meme, all right? Better hair than Trump. Oscar Goldman 2020. Not making any political comments. He does objectively have better hair than Trump, if you look at it. It's not a comb over. It's not, I know neither is Donald's hair a comb over. He's said that several times. It sure does look like one, though. So, you know, just get a good stylist. It's no problem. But this is essentially what you're looking to do. And notice I have 3 sources listed. I think it's a requirement of 2 sources for the second essay. I forgot to read that off. Basically, you want to aim for 1 source per paragraph. Now, how are we going to find sources? Well, the answer is you're going to use Galileo, which is the Georgia Library Online. There is a link to Galileo through Blackboard. If you go into the main page of Blackboard, as soon as you log in, you scroll all the way down to the right, very bottom of the page. There's going to be a little link that says Galileo. You click on that, it's going to take you to like a Google search where you can look up scholarly articles. That's where most of your stuff is going to come from. You want to be really careful about the kinds of material that you get, because it could be that you find something that isn't very useful. So I want to show you guys something. We're going to take on 2 different things. First I want to talk a little bit about Flat Earth Society, and then I want to talk about the crap credibility test, and we'll end there. There's more that I may release another video tomorrow. There is a little bit more, but we'll try to keep it compact for this one. Okay, share application screen 2, share Flat Earth Society. Boom. All right. So why do I show you this? When I first heard about this, I thought it was a joke. I thought that the people who were espousing it couldn't actually believe that the Earth was flat, and that they were doing it to troll people. What I found from continuing to do research and to argue with these people, which I have done, not very much, but I have, is that they definitely do actually believe that the Earth is flat. And they believe that for a number of different reasons. Now, if you talk to anyone that's in the field of aeronautics, airplanes, someone that's a pilot for a living, someone that is a sniper for the military that has to account for the curvature of the Earth when they shoot the sniper rifle, you know that the Earth is round. We know from the footage from our satellites that we send up around the Earth that it is round. We know from the International Space Station that it is round. The people who believe this believe that all of that information that we have seen is fabricated, and that everyone that is involved in NASA, for example, is part of a government conspiracy to keep you in the dark about what the real shape of the Earth is. Now, I can't begin to fathom why we would ever want to do that. Excuse me. Why would anyone ever want to lie to someone about what shape the planet, what consequence could it possibly have? And they have arguments for this. None of them are good. Why do I show you this? I want you to understand the dangers of the internet. I want you to understand how much garbage there is out there that just isn't true. And if you look at this webpage looks very professional. It looks put together. They have a forum, a wiki, a library, a store. And they are trying very hard to make themselves look legitimate in a world that delegitimizes them. This is this guy, Mike Hughes. I don't want to speak ill of the dead. This guy died. He died because he was building rockets, and he was going to shoot himself up into the rocket to prove that the Earth was flat. And his parachute failed, is my understanding, and he is no longer with us. So it is kind of sad, but like maybe don't, I don't know, maybe don't build rockets in your garage. Maybe leave that to the engineering professionals. And, I mean, good on him, I guess, but it seems a little insane. Needless to say, he never got high enough to prove that the earth was flat, and now he's no longer with us. So, take it with a grain of salt, but this is out there. So how do you determine then what is legitimate and what is not? Well, we're going to take a look now at the crap credibility test. Crap credibility test. Okay. And this will be what we end the video on today. When you are researching sources, you need to make sure that the sources are credible, especially if they're just from the internet, because anyone can write something in their mom's basement and publish it. If you are a Wikipedia fan, trust me, I know, I love Wikipedia too. But Wikipedia is an open edit source, which means that anyone could edit it. And they do. A lot of times people troll Wikipedia and they edit things that aren't true and they say things that aren't true. And then sometimes they can just be flat wrong. I do a lot of independent research on stuff that I'm interested in my spare time, and I have some esoteric knowledge that I know a lot about, like a lot more than most people. And I find flaws on Wikipedia all the time. I find stuff that isn't true on Wikipedia all the time. And that's just the world that it's in. I mean, when you remove that layer of credibility, of expertise, which is the whole reason, by the way, that you're going to school right now, when you remove that, it becomes crazy. And you get the earth is flat and lizard people run the world and, the Illuminati is coming, right? So how do we determine what's true and what isn't? We have to establish credibility. So this acronym, each of these letters corresponds to one of the things that we need to remember when trying to establish credibility. The first one, C, is currency. How current is the source? Meaning how close to the present time is it? The closer to the present time, specifically with regard to science, the better. Okay? Now, if you were to look at science from 50 years ago, let's say you're going to do psychology from 50 years ago, you'd find a lot of stuff on electroshock therapy and lobotomies and stuff that nobody does anymore because it's cruel and unusual. That part of the psychology treatment is no longer in vogue, and the people that do practice it still today are very fringe, and so that wouldn't be relevant because it's outdated. If you went back even further, back to the Renaissance, when we had the Galen theory of medicine, which basically said that the human body was a balance of different humors, different juices. You're a bag of juices, and whenever something is wrong with you, it's because one of your juices is out of whack. So, if you're sick, we're going to drain your blood because, draining your blood will help get your juices in line. And we know today that draining the blood out of sick people is a great way to kill them. So the closer you are to the present moment, the better. You want to make sure that it is current. Ask yourself, when was it published? Has it been revised or updated? Does your topic require current information, or will older sources work as well? And are the links functional? Depending on what you're writing on, you may not need the most current stuff. Okay, but if you are writing about science or something that's on the cutting edge, you're going to need it fresh off the mint, man, within a decade at least. So please make sure that your sources are current. Look for the date. The next one is relevance. How relevant is this to your topic? Now, what you're going to find is it gets frustrating. There are a lot of sources out there that are peripherally relevant, but they're not directly relevant. So if I was writing an essay about protecting kelp forests, and I found an article on coral reefs that was talking about the importance of biodiversity in the ocean, and I wanted to use that quote on biodiversity, that would be fine, but I wouldn't be able to use the coral reef essay to talk about the kelp forest because those are two different things. So there's a lot of stuff that's in the ballpark, but not quite. So you need to ask yourself, how relevant is this, right? Does the information relate to your topic or answer your question? Who is the intended audience? Is the information at an appropriate level, i.e. too elementary or too advanced? If you're a guy reading a medical journal and you're not a medical student, maybe that's over your head. You probably don't know the jargon. You probably don't know what they're talking about. Or if you're a college student and you're reading a children's book like My Pet Goat, that's probably not going to help you very much. It's really elementary. And what does a pet goat have to do with writing an essay, So have you looked at a variety of sources? And this is kind of tough because Galileo is basically all you got at this school. So researching using Galileo is like, sometimes it's hard to get the third source to set the second source, that kind of thing. But still, you want to look at a variety. Take your time. Do your research. Would you be comfortable citing the source in your paper? Then we have authority. Remember, the authority has to match up. The authority of the person has to match up with the area of expertise. Who is the author? That's the first question you should ask. Sometimes the author's not listed. Sometimes the author's not listed and the source can still be credible, such as NASA.com, right? You'll be reading something on NASA.com. We know it's a credible website, but the person, the intern that wrote it, obviously isn't listed. What are the author's credentials? Is this person a scientist? Do they know what they're talking about? Are they qualified to write on this topic? Are they a marine biologist that's trying to write about farming, right? Because even though that person's a scientist, that area of scientist doesn't match up with the area of agriculture. See, is there contact information? Maybe you could reach out and ask them, hey, are you qualified? Are you credible? I don't know how dedicated you are. Or does the URL reveal anything? .com, .edu, .gov, .org. .edu and .gov are usually like, okay, so this was put out by either the education system or the government, which we generally consider credible, although the government lies all the time, and that's all I'm going to say. We'll move on to the next one. Accuracy. How accurate is the source? So to test the source accuracy, ask yourself the following questions. Where does this information come from? Is the information supported by evidence? Has the information been reviewed or refereed? A lot of times they'll have a peer-reviewed journal where a scientist will write something and then all the other scientists will read it and assess it themselves. Can I verify any of the information from your own personal knowledge? Although be careful there, right? Does the language or tone seem unbiased or free of emotion? I can't tell you how much a bad tone will affect your writing. And when you find a source that has this tone, you almost don't even want to read it, even if they're correct, right? Are there spelling errors or grammar errors? Most of the people that are worth their salt will go in and eliminate most of this stuff, although sometimes there are errors that make it through. Okay. And then the last one is purpose. Testing the purpose of a source means determining the reason the information exists. Why is this there? To test the source purpose, ask and answer the following questions. What is the purpose of the information? And do the authors make this purpose clear? So general purposes might be to inform, to teach, to sell you something, to entertain or persuade. Is the information fact, opinion, or propaganda? Propaganda is tough to recognize sometimes, but you do need to ask yourself, is this material put out by some political group with an agenda? And if it is, can I trust it, right? Are there political, ideological, cultural, religious, institutional, personal biases evident, right? And sometimes there will be. I remember when I was a kid, the tobacco conglomerate Philip Morris put out, they paid for studies to show that tobacco wasn't as dangerous as people thought. And so they basically paid scientists to destroy their credibility and produce results that would favor them. So you got to watch out for that kind of stuff. Even though people are credible, they have scientific degrees and stuff, there's a price tag a lot of times, and people can sell their credibility. So you have to be careful, and you have to really ask yourself, what is the purpose of this? Why was this created? Can I trust this? And don't go for the confirmation bias either. If you're pro-gun and you're reading a pro-gun article on NRA.com, even if you're pro-gun, you still need to examine your institutional bias and go, okay, well, this is put out by the NRA, so maybe they have an interest in stretching the truth. I'm not saying they are. And by the way, you shouldn't be writing the gun essay anyway, because it was one of the topics that I said I didn't want you to write on. But it's just an example. So that is the CRAP credibility test. One more time, that's currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. This slideshow will be available in the writing assignments folder, in the writing assignment 2 folder, subfolder therein, as will the essay over Oscar Goldman running for president. There is also a video that I kind of want to show you. Let me see if I can pull it up. Oscar Goldman's campaign video. And this is what we'll end on today, because I think I'm losing my voice again. I always get to you guys with these lectures, and I end up losing my voice. So I'll probably release another video tomorrow to go over, show you exactly how to use Galileo and stuff. But okay. Let me share the screen. And we're going to watch my video from my rooster running for president. Now, I made this on iMovie, and everyone thinks it's all like fancy editing. It really isn't. It's just really easy to make. Okay, here we go. Campaign video for the Oscar Goldman presidency. Pause it right there, let you look at all of the chicken puns that I have written down here. Edited by some human production designer, Mark McNugget, director of photography, Colonel Sanders, casting by Cluck Fowler, costume designer, Bill Buzzard, executive producer, Oscar Goldman, written by Chicken Little. So anyway, that's just a little bit of humor. You guys know I like humor. I like to make things a little more lighthearted than they have to be. We always get so serious with the schooling. Well, there we go. So I think that is going to cut it for today. I can show you how to research things on Galileo, and I might do some more examples for you. Tomorrow, the campuses are closed if you were thinking of coming in for some reason. There is a training day where all of us faculty types, we have to go and be trained. So that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. So won't be coming into school. I probably won't be answering emails very well. If you have any questions that I haven't answered, things gotten through the cracks. If I haven't answered you by now, it's probably been buried. So you might want to remind me if there's anything I'm missing. Other than that, we are well into the argumentation unit. That essay is going to be due July 11th, which is a Sunday, 11:59. Quicker than you think. It's right around the corner. So be brainstorming topics. What are you going to write about? What's interesting to you, right? What do you, maybe you have an insight in or a little bit of foreknowledge about that other people don't have. And that's the kind of thing that you should lean towards. So with that being said, have an excellent afternoon, and I will see you all next week.